What's going on, guys? It's Joe Farewell, and today I'm going to take you through a little journey through history. This is my competition handgun history, missing one or two guns in there, but I'm pretty excited to do this with you guys and kind of show you why I've picked the guns that I've picked, show you the accessories that I've put on the guns in my past, and why I run what I run today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the first one. Now my first gun actually isn't out here. The very first gun I used in competition was a Springfield XD in 40 caliber. Yes, I know it is the laugh of the internet these days, but at the time it was a pretty badass gun. And that was actually my very first handgun ever. And I put quite a few rounds to that before moving on. Now, the XD did serve me well, but I was shooting either limited division with an XD, which wasn't great, or I was shooting production with a 40, which wasn't great. So that gun ended up having to go, and I eventually upgraded to a Smith & Wesson M&P. Now, this is actually my second M&P. My first M&P I also don't have. I traded that one for this one. This is the Pro Series. This is a little bit longer slide. And I actually had this one stippled and custom Cerakote done. This is when I was in law enforcement. So I was pretty excited about this pistol, and I put a lot of rounds to this one. This pistol I ran for probably about 6 or 7 years in competition. And it still just feels like home when I pick it up. I really do enjoy shooting this pistol still. So what did I do this pistol to make it competition ready? Well, when I got it, it was bone stock. It was just a M&P 9 Pro Series 5¼ inch barrel, and I wanted to do a couple things to it. So the first thing I did was put some sights on here. We have a fiber optic front sight and I believe this is a Warren Tactical. I may be off on that. I'll double check and maybe I'll put a note down below. Oh wait, just kidding. It is a Warren Tactical rear sight or sight set. So the Warren Tactical sights I actually really like because it has a unique little swoop design on the back of the rear sight, which gives me just a little bit more visibility when I'm shooting side to side versus like a Dawson sight. So I really enjoyed that sight. It's got a kind of a wide notch, small fiber front, but not too small. It actually looks pretty bulky now looking at compared to what I shoot now. I have a KKM precision barrel in here. This gave me some really great accuracy when my original barrel started to lose its group, and I don't know if that was me shooting it out or I wasn't cleaning it properly. This was, again, about 10 years ago when I was running this gun. So from there, I went ahead and swapped out to the Apex trigger. Now, Apex triggers in an M&P is an absolute win. One thing that I will tell you is you got to watch out for these because after a lot of rounds, you can start to get light strikes. You need to make sure you're rotating your springs out properly. I don't know the proper maintenance schedule on an M&P, but there's a lot of people out there that can give you that information. From there, we went ahead and stippled this. This just gives me a little bit better grip on the gun because it's a plastic grip. Obviously, it can get a little bit slippery, especially in Florida where we're sweating our butts off. But the stippling helped quite a bit. It's a little bit ugly stipple job, but it did the trick. Now, the last thing was this magwell, and it took me a while to upgrade this magwell, and I only upgraded this after I started shooting 3-gun, because in USPSA, where I started out, putting a magwell on would guarantee me in limited. So I was running this in production quite a bit, and then when I put the magwell on, I was automatically bumped to limited, so I was just shooting limited minor power factor. So a little magwell on here, and I don't remember the company who made this one. I wish I could, but you can see I put some work in on that magwell. Definitely had a lot of missed reloads on that. You can see on the outside of that magwell, it's got some wear and tear, and that's after I Cerakoted it. So overall, this was a great gun. I still really enjoy these M&Ps. It's one of my favorite guns out there as far as a production gun. Now, one of the things that did happen, I broke off the ambidextrous slide release right here. That's snapped off. On the other side, you can see it's there. It's also worn down, but I didn't snap this side. So at least the side that I really needed is not broken off. This side it is. I don't know how that happened. I have no idea when it happened, how it happened, but it happened. So this gun, like I said, lots and lots of rounds through it. Solid shooter. Still love to shoot it to this day. But I wanted to move on. So at some point, this was probably 2016 maybe, I was shooting a lot of 3-gun, and I'm like, hey, my pistols just hold me back. I really want to jump into something that has a little bit better trigger. While the Apex is solid, it's not a 2011 trigger, it's not a CZ trigger. And I was actually looking to pick up a CZ Tac Sport Orange. That's what I was gonna go with at the time. And I almost bought that gun. I was really happy with it. I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna pull the trigger on it, so to speak. But I was also really tight on money. So I was really like, it was a huge purchase for me at the time, like huge. I was in law enforcement. I was barely making a living doing that. I was teaching classes on the side here and there, and that was where I was able to kind of like pull some money to go shoot competitions, go buy ammo for the range. And then I would save up, you know, teach a class, save, you know, a couple $100 and put that into my new gun fund. So when I was looking at the Tac Sport Orange, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and buy this. And I was talking to a buddy at a gun store who was looking for me to find a deal on one. And he's like, hey, you know, I'm part of this dealership program for STI, which is now Staccato, STI at the time. And he said, we actually get a good discount on guns. Let me see if I can hook you up with that. So I got a great deal on my next upgrade. And that was the STI DVC 3 gun. And I will tell you this, guys, jumping from an M&P to a 2011 and STI, that was a huge deal for me. And I'll see if I can find some old footage of some matches when I first got this thing and was running it. But that was back when it had the gold barrel. And I actually got this one also Cerakoted, which you can see it is worn down. The barrel's all worn down. The parts are all worn down because I put a ton of rounds on this gun as well. And this gun really did well for me for quite a long time until I started having issues with the mainspring. So the mainspring had, I don't know, 30,000 rounds on it, something like that, 40,000 rounds maybe. I honestly don't remember. And it started giving me issues. I was having hammer follow, I was having some bump fires, and obviously that's not something you want to have during a match. So Tony Pignato, who's been a longtime employee of STI Staccato, I saw him at a match. I'm like, Tony, help me out with this, brother. This is what's going on. He's like, well, when was the last time you changed your recoil spring? I'm like 50,000 rounds ago. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I've never changed it before. He said, well, when was the last time you changed your mainspring? I'm like, never. Like, I didn't know that was the thing that you're supposed to do. He's like, you're supposed to change it every 5,000 rounds. I'm like, Jesus, man, I didn't know. So, needless to say, he's like, well, let's get you some new springs in there. He actually swapped out my entire grip module at the time because he had one there that he could throw in here. That one had a flat grip panel, or a flat trigger, I mean. And that was a big deal. The original one that I had, my original grip panel, or grip, was actually really thin right here. So something to keep in mind, on a plastic grip, you can actually compress this. Like there is flex to this. Not much, but there is some. And when they polished this out and they stippled it, they actually filed it down so thin right here where my middle finger went that if I were to do a reload, I had to really focus on releasing my middle finger so that I wouldn't pinch the magazine in. You could actually put pressure on this and see it pushing in. That was not a good thing. But once we swapped it out, I didn't have that issue any longer. The other thing that I did was I threw on a limb cap magwell. And this magwell, they just released it at the time, and people were like, oh my gosh, it's like black magic, it's really cool. And let me tell you, it really is. Because with this limb cap magwell, I could literally turn a magazine sideways and it redirects it into the magwell, or into the grip. Absolutely insane how they did that. And I remember the first time I put this thing on, it was like I couldn't miss a reload. I could literally throw this mag up here sideways and it'll rotate it back into the gun. So that was really neat. But other than that, I didn't really do a whole lot to this gun. You know, some spring changes to make sure that it was tuned properly, or not tuned, but maintained properly. The magwell to really lock in those reloads that I screwed up. And then it comes with a fiber optic front sight and the STI rear sight. Now, the STI rear sight, and I don't know if James can zoom in on this a little bit, but I liked my M&P sight so much that when I switched over to this one, which I think is actually a Dawson Precision sight, maybe, but is branded STI, it had this big square black sight on the back of it. And I didn't like that. So I wanted to go back to the Warren Tactical that I had on my M&P, but at the time, I just bought an expensive pistol and I couldn't swing a $150 pair of sights. So I'm like, let me just Dremel this shit, right? I'm a 3-gunner, we can do this. So I literally took a Dremel tool and cut the corners of my sight off. Can you see that on there? It's pretty hilarious. It is not anywhere close to even. It's close, but it's definitely not even. When you look through the sights on this, you can absolutely see that there is a difference from one side to the other. I did the best I could. I angled it back a little bit. I Sharpied it so it wouldn't reflect once I cut that. I'm like, doesn't look great. But it did the trick, and it did give me that little bit wider field of view so I didn't have that big blocky rear sight. and I still have it flat across the top. So I ran this gun for several years, really enjoyed it, definitely a solid pistol. And then STI turned into Staccato. They also create some good pistols too, but there's still something about the STI DVC that is special. So moving on from there, we have M&P, the STI, and then I had the wonderful fortune of having a student in one of my classes that had a Hyperion, an Atlas Hyperion. And from the very first time that I picked that gun up, and I felt, at that time it was the Chile grip, and I felt how that gun, you know, ran, the shorter barrel. I loved the way that it returned back to zero. Just the way that that gun shot was so spectacular. I'm like, I know I've got this STI that has been great for me. I ran it for years, solid gun. But the Atlas was a whole nother level. It was like going from a Corvette to a Ferrari, or, you know, a Ford Mustang to a freaking Bugatti. It was another level to me. So I knew at that point that I definitely wanted to get an Atlas. And after quite a while of saving up and talking to them and, you know, playing with some other pistols, some other Atlas pistols, I'm like, definitely need to get a Hyperion because I was shooting TAC Ops at the time. So this was my OG Atlas Hyperion, and this gun was absolutely a boss. Now you can see it's a little bit different from the M&P and my STI because the magwell is a Dawson Ice magwell. It's actually got a polymer insert, so this polymer has been just chewed up, and I'll see if James can get a little shot in here. You can see just how chewed up the inside of that grip is because I dry fired my life away on this gun. I really put many hours of dry fire on this gun, and it shot lights out. It still shoots lights out. I still love running this gun. The only reason I don't run this gun more is because it doesn't have an optics cut. Looking at Atlas as a whole and where they've shifted as a company over the past few years, they've gotten away from this Hyperion. It's become one of the lowest selling guns just because it's not optics ready, and everybody now wants an optics cut. So when the Athena came out, that kind of pushed the Hyperion into obsolescence, just because the Athena is the same pistol essentially, but cut for an optic. I still think that the Hyperion has the sexiest slide cuts. I love the way this gun feels. I love racking it. I love the way that it looks. And someday, when I get really big and rich and happy and able to, well, I'm happy now, so I'm not complaining about that. But one day, my goal is to have an entire set of Hyperion cut Atlases. And I don't know if that's going to be a reality because I'll have to talk to them to really push that. But that'll be a future goal, have a whole set of Atlases with the Hyperion slide cuts because I just think it's gorgeous. So this is when they were doing the Chile grips on their guns. This is an aluminum grip. Has a great feel to it. Not as quite as aggressive as, you know, some of your other grips out there, and especially not the aggressive texture Atlas grips now, the Alpha, but still solid texture. You can see where my sweat has really worn down the finish on this, and like I said, just a solid gun. So this one I shot for a couple years, I think 2 years maybe, but put a ton of time into that one. So something I just noticed as we're shooting some B-roll for this video is this Hyperion has the OG Atlas logo, and if you notice, it has the flaming globe with Atlas holding it. So the new logo is just a flaming globe. This is an OG, truly an OG gun. So that's pretty cool. And then I decided to go into open division, and I was kind of dabbling in open. I was playing around with some dissident shotguns, and I was doing some courses talking about open division, helping some guys out with that. And I'm like, man, I really like this idea of just going fast. It's a race division, right? That's where like all gear bets are off. Like whoever has the best gear and can push it to its limit and make sure it's reliable, they're gonna win. And that's not to say that TAC Ops isn't like that, because it is, but it's just a little bit different. So with open, I finally upgraded to an Erebus. And this was my original Erebus. Now I'm pretty sure this Erebus has the most rounds of almost any of my guns. Maybe a couple rifles have as many. Actually, I don't even know about that. This one has probably around 90 to 95,000 rounds on it. And you can really tell by the magwell on this one that I put some serious dry fire in on this gun. This magwell's are actually being refinished once and torn up again. So you can also see this has the Atlas Alpha grips, and I have worn the grip panel completely down just because that's where I grip it. You can see on both sides where that's raised up, it is worn, the tips of these little triangles are worn down, and it's still super comfortable, still grippy, plenty grippy enough, but it's not quite as grippy as the next one I'll show you. The couple of things that I've done to this gun, I like running a short trigger. So the medium and long triggers are comfortable. The long trigger is a little bit too long for me. The medium trigger is not bad. This is a short trigger in this gun. And if you notice, all my other Atlases have short triggers as well. It is the comfortable spot for me. So if you look at here, my trigger finger bends naturally here. When I put my finger on the trigger, the pad of my finger is actually flat instead of like curving down or being outstretched. So I like how when I grip this gun, where that makes my finger land on the trigger. The only other thing I've done to this is throw a Vortex razor on top. This Vortex razor is a 6 MOA dot. I like having a little bit bigger dot. I find that it doesn't hold me back when I'm shooting longer targets, because when you think about this, you know, a lot of people will be like, well, if you're shooting a 6-inch plate at 25 yards, your dot's covering. I'm like, no, it's not. Okay, a 6-inch plate at 25 yards, 1 MOA is 1/4 inch. So if I've got a 6 MOA dot, I'm looking at 1.5 inches covering the plate. That's not that big of a deal. Now, if you're shooting bullseye, yeah, maybe we want to drop down to a 3 or 2.5 MOA dot, get it more precise. But when I'm shooting pistol, generally I like to go with a bigger dot because I can pick that up a little bit easier as I'm bringing it up to my eyes. My eyes see that a little bit faster. I say faster. I haven't actually put it on quantifiably to see which one's faster, but I do know that I like it. It's more of a personal preference thing. So running the bigger dot, no problems with that. This gun, even though it is, you know, shot a ton of rounds, it is still got a good lockup. It is still tight, still shoots amazing. Now, one thing that happened recently, last year actually, is the compensator had so much buildup after that, you know, 85,000 rounds, that there was a ton of carbon built up in the compensator to the point where the bullet was actually striking the carbon as it was leaving the barrel. And I thought that the barrel was shot out or something was wrong with the gun. I sent it back to Atlas. I'm like, hey, what can we do about this? I think I shot my barrel out. And they're like, well, you've only got 85,000 rounds. It's actually not that many. I'm like, I thought it was a lot. So they cleaned out the carbon buildup in there and said that no, you should be good. Put groups back together. It is still stacking rounds on top of each other. So it was just me, lack of maintenance again. So this is something I didn't realize I needed to do maintenance on. And if you're not shooting, you know, 50,000 rounds, you probably don't have to worry about it. But when you do get those higher round counts, make sure you're checking this. And actually you should be checking it before that. But what I did was just use a little screwdriver and tap it out. Now, we don't want to bang this thing. We don't want to beat the crap out of it, but maybe soak it in a sonic cleaner if you have that, and then chisel that stuff out, okay? Now, this gun is still one of my go-to. This is my training gun now, but my current competition pistol that I run for matches is this Erebus. Now, this Erebus is special because Atlas posted in our little team chat that they had this one-off gun with this crazy blue coating. Like, check this out, it's really cool. We just had this, you know, tested out to see if we like it. And they're like, we don't think it's gonna go into production because the coating isn't holding up well enough, so we're probably not gonna use it, but it came out really nice. I'm like, I don't care if this one's not going into production. I love that blue. So I needed a new one that's gonna be, you know, replacing the older one for my, my match gun. And I said, that's gonna be the one for me. So I went ahead and bought this one. This one was a special one-off coating. You can't get this. And I still think it is just the most beautiful coating out there. So again, another Atlas Erebus, absolutely fantastic gun. Now, I have had some little issues with this one where I had to recently replace the magwell. And you can see this is a new magwell versus a very well-used magwell. Big difference between those two. This new magwell I replaced because this is an aluminum magwell on aluminum grip. Before, I had a steel magwell on the aluminum grip, and I actually broke the tab of the grip off. So this is something that they don't do typically. That steel magwell was also the same blue, but when you buy an aluminum magwell or an aluminum grip pistol from Atlas, you're going to get an aluminum magwell on it, not a steel one. And that's for good reason. I'm the poster child of breaking things when it comes to actually putting lots and lots of rounds on it, and that was an issue that we found. You can see this barrel is worn. You can see the coating's worn down, and that is exactly why they didn't put this coating into production. It just doesn't hold up to high round counts. Now, if you were to do this coating and have it as a safe queen, as a display piece, absolutely it would be awesome. However, I shoot my guns, and I shoot them a lot. So you can see that wore off up here, all wore off. The barrel, you know, all around the barrel, anywhere where we're having contact, it's wearing down. So otherwise, this is my match gun. It shoots fantastic. Same Vortex Razor, 6 MOA dot on top, and this thing is a beast when it comes to shooting open division. Now, I did want to bring one more gun out here, because while I love shooting open, I also have been dabbling around in limited optics, and that's the new division for USPSA. I also use this gun for PCSL 2 gun in their practical division, I think it's called. I'll have to double check that, but that's kind of your tactical setups. You can shoot a 2011 with a red dot, but you can't have a compensator on it. Same thing with limited optics in USPSA. You can shoot a 2011 with a magwell and a red dot, but no compensator. So that's what this gun is all about. This is a 9mm with a 4.6-inch barrel, and this is my limited optics gun, or my practical gun if I'm shooting PCSL. It is an Atlas Athena, and I love this gun too. I've put quite a few rounds, not as many as I have on some of these other ones, but I run this gun quite a bit for practice. I ran this gun for the Prairie Fire rank match last year, or I guess year before last now, and it's done really well for me. I recently had an issue with it where I broke an extractor, and that is just after putting lots of rounds on the gun, it's bound to happen. So make sure you have spare extractors on hand. Definitely a part that is, if you put a high round count on any gun, it's definitely something you can break. I've broken an extractor also on my M&P years ago. I broke that one. Never broke an extractor on my Hyperion. I think I broke one. I did break one on my old Erebus. And so it's just a piece that wears out. It's a piece of spring steel that is constantly under tension and constantly releasing tension. So it is going to wear out. So make sure that that's a part that you have in your kit, that if one breaks, when one breaks, you're ready to replace it. Other than that, this gun is pretty solid. Now, I don't have my rear sight in here. You can get backup iron sights for this. So you put a rear sight in front of the red dot on this plate, and then you have your front sight there. What I found is with the Razor, it's a little bit too high. You can't even see the rear sight anyway, so I just pulled that off and I don't worry about it. Other than that, that is my gun. Now, why choose 2011? 2011 is, you know, based off of the 1911 handgun. And the idea is that you can run a double stack mag. You know, this is a 23 round mag all the way up to a 30 rounder, you know, big stick. And you're able to get a lot of rounds into a very, you know, precise shooting gun. Now, is it as reliable as an M&P or a Glock or a SIG? Yes and no. It is extremely reliable if you take care of it. If you take this and you toss it in the sand, it's probably gonna jam up. If you take an M&P and toss it in the sand, it may jam up, and I've seen every other gun fail too, but because of the tolerances are so much looser in these, you can hear this thing rattling around. When I pull the trigger, you can see the slide actually kind of move a little bit because the tolerances are loose. So when you take a precision machined part like an Atlas, where this thing, there is zero movement in this, it has got perfect lockup, it is absolutely precision machined and then hand fit together, and you introduce something else like sand, dust, you know, inclement weather, not really too much inclement weather, but dusty weather, I would say. I shot the PCSL championship out in Utah the last few years, and you know, it's super dusty out there. My guns ran regardless because I kept them clean, I kept them bagged, and made sure that I was keeping them out of the dust as much as possible. But I saw lots of other guns fail. So the idea is we can take a precision machine gun like this and, you know, put a 30 round mag in it or a 23 round mag in it and have the best trigger out there. There is no better platform or other platform that has a better trigger, in my opinion. If you can find one, let me know. These triggers are incredibly, incredibly precise, crisp, light. This is just under 2 pounds. There's no creep on it. It's there. Like when I decide to pull that trigger, it is pressed. So the 2011 platform has the best trigger. It has the best feel. It has the best balance, in my opinion, again. So for accuracy, unparalleled. Like they're absolutely an incredibly accurate gun. They feel good, they shoot incredibly well. And most of these guns, even like the STI, the Staccatos, even now you have Springfield with their Prodigy that's coming through. That's a $1,600 gun, okay? to get into the 2011 market. Now, the interesting thing about that is it's not going to be a $5,000, $6,000 Atlas. It's not going to be even in the same boat as that. It's the baseline of that. But to say that it's not a viable platform is also incorrect. You're going to have to put some money into it to make it really reliable and run as well as you might want it to. But having this wide range of options in the 2011 world is really awesome. So I just kind of want to take you guys through my history in 2011, is why I went with the 2011 in the first place, which was that opportunity to buy this STI at a great deal instead of going for the CZ Tac Sport Orange. And I'm happy I did. And I will tell you that now getting to shoot 2011s for Atlas Gunworks is an absolute pleasure, because they are the best 2011 on the market. And they truly do win matches for me, and they're a great company to be part of. They make a phenomenal gun, and the really cool thing that I love about Atlas is they are truly shooting community focused. So what I mean by that is they're supplying parts to competitors, different companies that produce other 2011s that also would be competition for them. They support them, they support me doing this, talking about staccatos, talking about STIs, talking about Hayes or Venom, like any of these other companies out there. They want to see the 2011 market grow, and they support the sport. So that's why I love being part of the Atlas crew. I love being able to share this with you guys, and I hope that you just really got something out of this. So all that to say, thank you guys for being part of this video, for taking the time out of your day to watch it and kind of join me for a little history lesson on what I shoot, why I shoot it, and how I got here. Hopefully I'll catch up with you at a match or at a class soon. If you want to hit me up on social media, you're always welcome to do so. And be sure to check out Dry Fire Mastery as well. We have all sorts of online training on there, competition handgun training, handgun fundamentals, 3-gun training, and of course we're going to be doing some really cool stuff with Atlas on the online space, as well as video content and lots of shooting. So like I said, hope to see you guys at a match in the near future or at a class. Either way, I'll see y'all on the range.